December 20th, 1943. High above the war-torn skies of Nazi Germany, a crippled American B-17 Flying Fortress bomber limps through the freezing air. Its engines sputtering, its fuselage riddled with holes like Swiss cheese from relentless enemy fire. Inside, a young pilot named Charlie Brown grips the controls, his crew battered and bleeding, knowing they're sitting ducks for any German fighter that spots them. Death seems inevitable, but then out of the clouds a sleek Messerschmitt Bf-109 streaks toward them, the deadly silhouette of a Luftwaffe ace. The American gunners, what's left of them, brace for the end. Yet in a moment that defies the brutality of war, the German pilot doesn't fire. Instead, he pulls up alongside, looks into their eyes, and makes a choice that could cost him his life. This is the incredible true story of mercy in the midst of madness. A tale of two enemies who became brothers in the sky. A story that reminds us, even in humanity's darkest hour, compassion can still break through the storm. Let's go back to the beginning, to understand how this extraordinary encounter came to be. World War II was raging across Europe, and by late 1943, the Allies were turning the tide against Hitler's Third Reich. The United States Army Air Forces, part of the mighty 8th Air Force based in England, had launched a massive strategic bombing campaign to cripple Germany's war machine. Factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants were prime targets, hammered day after day by fleets of heavy bombers like the B-17, nicknamed the Flying Fortress, for its rugged design and heavy armament. But these missions were no cakewalk. The skies over Germany were a gauntlet of flak, anti-aircraft shells bursting like deadly fireworks, and swarms of agile German fighters eager to rack up kills. Survival rates were grim. Many crews never made it home. It was a war of attrition, where young men on both sides faced unimaginable horrors. Enter Second Lieutenant Charles L. Charlie Brown, a 21-year-old farm boy from Weston, West Virginia. Charlie wasn't your typical hotshot pilot. He was quiet, determined, with a strong sense of duty shaped by his rural upbringing. He joined the Army Air Forces right out of high school, training rigorously to command one of those massive B-17s. By December 1943, he was assigned to the 527th Bombardment Squadron of the 379th Bombardment Group, stationed at RAF Kimbolton in the English countryside. His crew was a ragtag bunch of young Americans, each with their own stories and dreams thrown together by fate. There was co-pilot Spencer Pinky Luke, a steady hand from Ohio, navigator Albert Doc Sadok, the brains of the operation, bombardier Robert Andy Andrews, precise under pressure, flight engineer Bertrand Frenchy Coulombe, who kept the engines humming, radio operator Richard Dick Petchout, tail gunner Hugh Ecky Eckenrode, always watching their six, left waist gunner Lloyd Jennings, right waist gunner Alex Russian Yelisanko, and ball turret gunner Samuel Blackie Blackford, squeezed into that tiny glass bubble beneath the plane. These men weren't seasoned veterans. This was their first combat mission together. They'd bonded over card games, shared smokes, and late-night talks about home, wives, sweethearts, families waiting back in the States. They named their B-17 Ye Old Pub, painting a cheerful pub sign on the nose as a nod to the cozy English taverns where they'd unwind after training flights. But on the morning of December 20th, the mood was tense. The briefing room at Kimbolton was filled with the scent of coffee and cigarette smoke as the intelligence officer laid out the plan. A raid on the Focke-Wulf aircraft factory in Bremen, Germany. Expect heavy flak, over 250 guns defending the target, he warned. And fighters, hundreds of them. Stay in formation. Stragglers don't come back. Charlie's crew was slotted into Purple Heart Corner, the vulnerable low rear position in the bomber stream, where wounded planes often ended up earning their crews the infamous Purple Heart Medal for injuries, or worse. As the sun rose over the foggy English fields, the roar of engines shattered the silence. One by one, the B-17s taxied down the runway, heavy with bombs and fuel. Charlie eased Ye Old Pub into the air, the four Wright Cyclone engines thundering as they climbed to join the formation. The crew checked their oxygen masks, heated suits, and guns. 11 50 caliber machine guns in total, ready to spit fire at any threat. Crossing the North Sea, the temperature plummeted to minus 60 degrees Celsius, freezing fingers and fogging instruments. Pinky Luke cracked jokes over the intercom to ease the nerves. "Hey, fellas, if we spot Santa up here, let's ask him for a one-way ticket home." Laughter echoed, but everyone knew the real test was ahead. Approaching the Dutch coast, the first signs of trouble appeared, puffs of black smoke from German flak batteries below. The bombers pressed on, weaving through the explosions. As they neared Bremen, the sky turned into a nightmare. Flak bursts rocked the plane like giant fists, shrapnel clanging against the aluminum skin. "Hold steady," Charlie shouted as they began their 10-minute bomb run at 27,300 feet. Andy Andrews peered through the Norden bomb site, aligning the crosshairs on the factory below. But just before release, disaster struck. A flak shell exploded directly under the nose, shattering the plexiglass and sending shards flying. The No. 2 engine caught fire, flames licking the wing before the crew extinguished it. No. 4 engine, already finicky from pre-flight issues, began vibrating wildly, forcing Charlie to throttle it back. The bombs dropped, but Ye Old Pub was slowing, dropping out of the protective formation. Now a straggler, they were easy prey. "Bandits at 3 o'clock!" Frenchy Coulomb yelled from the top turret. A swarm of over a dozen German fighters, Bf-109s and FW-190s from Jagdgeschwader 11, swooped in like hawks. Cannon fire raked the bomber. 20mm shells punched through the fuselage, sparking fires and chaos. The No. 3 engine took a hit, coughing smoke and losing power. Oxygen lines ruptured, leaving some crewmen gasping in the thin air. Hydraulic systems failed, freezing the guns in place. Ecke Eckenrode in the tail screamed as a burst shredded his position. He was killed instantly, his body slumped over the guns. Yelisanko, the right waist gunner, was wounded, blood soaking his flight suit. Blackford in the ball turret spun wildly, firing bursts at the attackers, but his turret jammed from the damage. The attack lasted a grueling 10 minutes. "We're hit bad, Skipper," Pinky called out. Charlie fought the controls, the plane yawing wildly with half the rudder gone and the port elevator mangled. The radio was out, electrical systems flickering. Morphine syrettes for the wounded froze solid in the cold. The crew considered bailing out over enemy territory, but with Yelisanko too injured to jump, they pressed on. "We stick together," Charlie said firmly over the intercom. "Get us home, boys." Somehow they shook off the fighters, but the damage was catastrophic. With only 40% power left, Ye Old Pub descended erratically, losing altitude and straying off course. Unbeknownst to them, they were flying directly over a German airfield near Oldenburg, where anti-aircraft gunners held their fire, perhaps mistaking the low-flying bomber for a capture or thinking it was about to crash. On the ground at that airfield was Oberleutnant Franz Stiegler, a 28-year-old Luftwaffe ace from Bavaria. Stiegler was no novice. He'd flown over 400 combat sorties, claiming 27 victories mostly in North Africa with JG-27, the Afrika Geschwader. He was a skilled pilot, trained by his brother who'd been killed early in the war, fueling Franz's drive for revenge. But war had changed him. He'd seen friends die, cities burn, and the futility of it all. His commanding officer in Africa, Gustav Rodel, had instilled a code of honor. "If I ever hear of you shooting at a man in a parachute, I'll shoot you myself." Those words haunted him. On this day, Stiegler's Bf-109 was on the tarmac, refueling after a sortie where he'd taken a 50 caliber hit to the radiator. He was itching for one more kill to earn the Knight's Cross, Germany's highest award for pilots. Spotting the lumbering B-17 overhead, Stiegler's ground crew alerted him. "An easy target," they shouted. Franz scrambled into his cockpit, the engine roaring to life. He took off, climbing quickly to intercept. As he closed in, he expected a quick victory, a burst of cannon fire to send the bomber spiraling down. But as he pulled alongside, something stopped him cold. Peering through the canopy, he saw the devastation. Holes torn in the fuselage, the tail gunner slumped dead in a pool of blood, crewmen tending to wounds, their faces pale with fear and exhaustion. The plane was defenseless, its guns silent and frozen. They looked like boys, Stigler thought, reminded of his own lost brother. To shoot them now would be like murdering men in parachutes, against everything he believed in. Franz circled the B-17, flying close enough to see Charlie Brown's wide eyes staring back. He gestured emphatically, "Land your plane, surrender." Charlie shook his head, misunderstanding. Were they being forced down? Stigler tried again, pointing toward Sweden, the neutral country just 30 minutes away, where the crew could get medical help and sit out the war. But the Americans, guns trained on him, didn't budge. Frenchie in the top turret had the German in his sights. "Skipper, he's right there. Should I take him?" Charlie hesitated. "No, hold fire. Let's see what he does." Stigler's mind raced. Shooting them down would mean certain execution if caught sparing an enemy. Court-martial, perhaps a firing squad. But his conscience won. "I cannot kill these men," he decided. Instead, he pulled into formation on the bomber's port side, shielding it from ground fire with his own plane. The anti-aircraft batteries below, seeing a Luftwaffe fighter escorting the B-17, held back. For several tense minutes, Stigler flew alongside, guiding them toward the North Sea and out of German airspace. Charlie and his crew watched in disbelief. "He's protecting us," Pinky muttered. As they crossed the coast over open water, safe from pursuit, Stigler throttled back. He locked eyes with Charlie one last time, raised his hand in a crisp salute, a gesture of respect between warriors, and banked away, disappearing into the clouds. "Godspeed," Stigler whispered to himself as he headed back, knowing he'd have to lie about the encounter to avoid punishment. Back in Ye Olde pub, the crew erupted in stunned chatter. "Did that just happen? A Jerry just saved our hides?" Doc Sadok said, shaking his head. Charlie focused on nursing the battered plane across 250 miles of stormy North Sea. With engines failing and fuel low, they barely made it, crash landing at RAF Seething in Norfolk, England, home to the 448th Bomb Group, not their own base. The wheels hit the runway with a screech, the plane skidding to a halt amid emergency crews. Medics rushed in, pulling out the wounded and the body of Eki Eckenrode. In the debriefing hut, Charlie recounted the story to incredulous intelligence officers. "A German fighter escorted us out? You're sure it wasn't a trick?" one asked. Charlie nodded. "He could have finished us any time. He chose not to." The officers classified the report, fearing it might humanize the enemy or encourage defections. "Keep this quiet," they ordered. Charlie and his crew were grounded briefly for repairs and mourning, but they flew more missions, completing their tour. Franz Stigler returned to his airfield, claiming he'd lost the bomber in clouds to avoid questions. He continued fighting, transitioning to the revolutionary Me-262 jet fighter in Jagdverband 44 under Adolf Galland. By war's end, he'd survived, but Germany lay in ruins. He emigrated to Canada in 1953, starting a lumber business in Vancouver, marrying and raising a family. The war faded, but the memory of that B-17 lingered. Charlie Brown went home to West Virginia after his tour, attending college on the GI Bill. He rejoined the Air Force in 1949, serving in Korea and Vietnam as a Foreign Service officer, retiring in 1972 to Miami as an inventor. But the incident haunted him too. In 1986, at a reunion of the Gathering of Eagles at Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama, Charlie shared the story when asked about memorable missions. "I always wondered about that German pilot," he said. That sparked a 4-year search through archives, U.S. Air Force records, West German Luftwaffe files, nothing. Finally, he wrote about it in a combat pilot's newsletter. Months later, a letter arrived from Canada. "Dear Charlie, I was the one. From seeing the stars and stripes on the fuselage and the dead tail gunner, I knew it was you. It was Franz Stigler. A phone call confirmed every detail, the damage, the salute, the escort. In 1990, they met at a reunion in Seattle, embracing like old friends. "Why didn't you shoot us down?" Charlie asked. Franz replied, "You were helpless. It would have been murder. And besides, I saw your eyes. You were just trying to get home like me." The two became inseparable, vacationing together, fishing in Canada, sharing stories with their families. Franz's wife and Charlie's bonded over the miracle. In 1993, Franz received the Star of Peace from European veterans for his act. In 2008, at Charlie's urging, the surviving crew got Silver Stars and Charlie the Air Force Cross. Tragically, Franz died in March 2008 at 92, Charlie in November at 86. Their last words to each other, "I love you, brother." This story isn't just about two pilots. It's a beacon of hope in war's abyss. In a conflict that claimed over 60 million lives where hatred was the norm, Franz Stigler and Charlie Brown showed that humanity could prevail. Stigler's chivalry echoed the knights of old, reminding us that even enemies share a common soul. Their legacy lives on, in books like A Higher Call by Adam Makos, songs by Sabaton like No Bullets Fly, and even TV episodes inspired by their mercy. Today, a restored B-17 flies as Ye Old Pub in air shows honoring their memory. As we reflect on World War II, let's remember, compassion isn't weakness. It's the ultimate strength. In the skies over Germany that day, no bullets flew, only grace. And that's a lesson for all time. Word count, approximately 5,200. Now, here are Google search keywords for finding old-style WWII images with a vintage, historical, human touch feel. These are tailored to key scenes in the script for 15-20 consistent images you can place according to the narrative, e.g., one every 1 to 2 minutes. Search for black and white or sepia-toned photos, archival footage stills, or authentic WWII era illustrations.